Since the beginning of time, all the matter in the universe has been governed by precisely balanced laws and constants. During an interview with Robin Collins, a philosopher with degrees in mathematics and physics, Strobel learned how these laws offer compelling evidence for a creator and conspire to make the universe habitable for life.
The laws of physics are balanced on a razor's edge for life to occur. For example, if you didn't have something like gravity that pulled matter together, you would never get planets, you wouldn't get stars, you wouldn't get any complex organisms. If you didn't have the strong nuclear force, there would be nothing to hold protons and neutrons together in the nucleus. And so you wouldn't have any atoms, so no chemistry. If you didn't have the electromagnetic force, you would have no bonding between chemicals. You'd have no light, and the list goes on. So you need all these sorts of fundamental principles have to be in place in order for life to occur. Wipe out one of those principles, wipe out one of those laws, no life.
Strobel learned that life also hinges on the precise strengths and relative values of many different physical constants. One example of this fine-tuning is the force of gravity.
Imagine a ruler divided up into 1-inch increments and then stretched across the entire universe, a distance of some 14 billion light years. For the purposes of illustration, the ruler represents the possible range for gravity. In other words, the setting for the strength of gravity could have been anywhere along the ruler, but it just happens to be situated in exactly the right place so that life is possible. Now, if you were to change the force of gravity by moving the setting just 1 inch compared to the entire width of the universe, the effect on life would be catastrophic.
No large-scale life forms could exist. Anything that was more than the size of a pea would be completely crushed. So you might be able to get life of a very, very primitive sort, such as bacteria, but you could never get conscious.
Is there any scientific basis for thinking our universe may have been created with purpose? John Polkinghorne worked alongside an astronomer who made a critical discovery that shook his beliefs.
One of the great triumphs of astrophysics in the second half of the 20th century was to figure out how the elements are made. Because the very early universe is very simple, it only makes very simple elements. In fact, hydrogen and helium, the two simplest elements, and you can't really do very much with them. They have very boring chemistry. You need much more elements if you're going to have something as interesting as life, and in particular you need carbon. The chemistry of life is the chemistry of carbon. So where does carbon come from? There's only one place in the whole universe where carbon is made. It's made in the interior nuclear furnaces of the stars. Every atom of carbon in our bodies was once inside a star. We're people of stardust. Now, how that happened was figured out in Cambridge. Fred Hoyle, a senior colleague of mine, was one of the leading figures in this, and they were trying to figure out how carbon was made. They had helium, and if they could make 3 heliums stick together, that would make carbon. But they couldn't figure out how to do that. To get 3 small things like that to stick together at once, you can't do it. Okay, so we do it bit by bit, make 2 stick together, that makes beryllium, stays around a bit, another one comes along, makes carbon. But it doesn't work because beryllium is very, very unstable. It just disappears like that. So they were stuck. And then Fred had a good idea, and he said, it'll just go if there is something called a resonance, a very enhanced effect, which is just at the right energy in carbon to make that extra one stick on much, much more quickly than you would have thought. So he was very pleased with himself. We went off the nuclear data tables just to check that this resonance, this effect, was there, and it wasn't. And so Fred was a very stubborn, persistent friend. He rang up some friends and said, look, you've missed something in carbon. There's a resonance there that you haven't spotted, but I know exactly where it is, so you had to have this energy. And they were apparently a bit reluctant to look, but in the end they went and looked, and they found it. That's a wonderful scientific story. But also it struck Fred that it's more than a scientific story, because of course if the laws of nuclear physics had been a tiny bit different, either there would be no resonance at all, or it would be some other energy which would be no good. And Fred, who had a lifelong commitment to atheism, is reported to have said in the Yorkshire accident, beyond my powers to imitate, the universe is a put-up job. In other words, this can't be just a happy accident. This is too significant for that. There must be something behind all this. Because Fred didn't like the word God, he says some capital I intelligence has monkeyed with the laws of the universe.
Observing the universe, then, can spring riddles for atheism, too. Hoyle's groundbreaking discovery led to what subsequently became known as the anthropic.